means of encountering Christ and how you can encounter Christ too. Or let me tell you about this great architecture in Chicago. You might even want to move here and enjoy 5 years of winter in Chicago. Right? And so there's something about the same truth that suddenly becomes really attractive or not. You make a dinner and tastes good, but it's 4 brown piles of slush on a plate. But there's something not compelling about that, even though it tastes the same. It's made of the same stuff. Or, you know, I went to dinner somewhere, and one of my friends always teases me. They invited me over for dinner, and they had a piece of boiled chicken, just chicken boiled in water on a plate, white rice with nothing on it, and cauliflower. And I was like, is this the white meal? What's going on? The flavorless white meal. And so it's the same food, right? But it just wasn't presented in a way that was delightful and attractive. And so keeping that in mind, let's look at a few things here. Because I did a little search. Am I doing the right? Oh, wrong button. A Google search for the most beautiful woman in the world. It's just terrible work I had to do, I know. Who do you think came up? Well, the person who came up the most was Angelina Jolie, right? Now, you say beautiful, and many people will say, well, beautiful, yeah, but most people might say words like hot or sexy or alluring or seductive, right? Those are not the same words as beautiful. Although in our popular culture, those are usually equated. And I know I heard that even talking about beauty can be a little dangerous. It's like, oh, you're just turning out a bunch of Barbie dolls out of your program. That's not at all what we're talking about here at all. Because what didn't come up for the most beautiful woman in the world was this, right? Mother Teresa is not likely to be on the cover of Glamour magazine. Because many people would say, look at that wrinkly old woman. Oh yeah, but she has this beautiful life of serving the poor. And so you have this shallow surface notions of beauty, and then you can have kind of deeper notions of beauty. This also did not come up, right? Here's an icon of the Virgin Mary, right, who we speak in the Catholic tradition as being the fairest of all the women, most beautiful of all women. Blessed art thou among women. And, you know, she probably wouldn't be on the cover of Glamour magazine either. Look at those long hands, those sort of ghoulish looking hands. If you saw a person like this on the street, you'd probably turn the other way, right? The iconic tradition emphasizes all kinds of things and actually distorts the image to make it more theological, not necessarily more attractive to the earthly mind. And so, who's more beautiful? You know, it's something from a casino. Why do they dress up women in a casino in little bunny outfits? It's because they want people's lower nature to be attracted and come in and gamble, right? So this was actually PG rated, but I made it extra PG rated with a little box over it. The question is, what criteria do you use to decide? And everybody's kind of lost in our culture. So I also did this because I knew where I was coming. The most beautiful hotel in the world. Turned out there was a top 100 hotels website somewhere. And I picked first number 66, the Yellow Submarine Hotel in England. You can actually go stay in there. And so, is that a beautiful hotel? Maybe I'll ask you now, is that a beautiful hotel?
No. Kind of cool.
Yeah, cool is cool, right? And this is a hotel in Singapore where they have this infinity pool up at the 80th
That's
floor.
really cool.
Oh, cool, right? Now you see there's an emotional response to this, and you say, wow, that's nifty. And nifty? Nothing wrong with nifty, right? You want people to come by your bakery and say, look at that cool cupcake, maybe I'll go in there. But when they get there, hopefully it tastes good too, right? And it's nutritious and it's all of that. So there's something about coolness or weirdness or strangeness that engages our intellect. Here's the Microcube Treehouse Hotel. So that's actually a hotel room. See the bridge here? On some trees, but it's covered in mirrors so that all you see is the reflection of the trees. So you say, I want a hotel, but I don't want it to look like a hotel. I want something that looks like the forest, but isn't the forest. And so there's suddenly these questions. This one, the Undersea Lodge in Florida, this is what the reviewer said. Terribly ugly and cramped. It makes the list for a great concept. The first underwater hotel you have to scuba dive to get in. So a hotel should not be ugly and cramped, right? But the fact that it's so weird means I'll put up with ugly and cramped in order to do this. But it's not really saying that the thing itself is beautiful. It's saying I'm having this odd, out of normal sense experience. So here are the questions we have. What is beauty? Is it a politically incorrect word? Is it just in the realm of Martha Stewart? Is this just fancy living and that kind of thing? Is it just a luxury for rich people, right? Or is it just in the eye of the beholder and therefore completely subjective? And we live in a culture that has moved from the object to the subject. So this is the object. Here's this chair. Now, suppose when I was a child I was tied to a chair and my mother used to beat me there. It's a very horrible situation. Now I see chairs and I'm afraid of chairs because I'm associated chairs with beating. That's my subjective response to an object. So that's legitimate, right? I have a subjective response to it, but that doesn't mean chairs are bad. It means I have an issue with chairs, and so the object stays the same. This could be an ugly chair or a beautiful chair. My reaction to it is legitimate, but it's not really changing the chair. So if someone comes up to you and says, you made this dinner of perfectly medium rare beef tenderloin. I hate beef tenderloin. So what? You know, it's still beef tenderloin and it's still cooked perfectly. So the object is the object, the subject is the subject, but it's not just purely subjective. There's an objective reality as well as a subjective reality. They're both important. So can we speak of objective beauty in that sense? And these are all the things we're going to toss around today. And so if you think about this theologically, there's this capital B beauty, that's sort of all the things of heaven, the things of God, the perfect version of truth, the perfect goodness of justice, the perfect goodness version of beauty, the perfect version of being itself, existence itself. And there's something that exists there, but then we take all the things of the earth and try to make beautiful things that somehow capture this beauty over on this side. So you might have in your mind sort of the perfect meal. Now, everybody in the room might have a different idea of what that perfect meal would be, but they're all engaging this perfect idea some way. Think about how many dogs there are. There's dogness, and then there's all the breeds of dogs, and then within each breed, there are all the examples of each dog. And you can't say, well, my dog's perfect and your dog's not, you know, or my husband's more beautiful than yours, or whatever it happens to be. People are people, but they all participate in beauty somehow. And where it meets, right here on this line, this is kind of the meeting place, where that perfection kisses our best attempt to make it perfect. And it's never going to be perfect on earth, but we still have the idea of there being something perfect out there. And that's where the arguments happen, because people will say, well, how do I define this? How do I define what beautiful thing is? And so all of a sudden you've gone from, I don't like chairs because my mother beat me on a chair, to let's talk about the nature of chairs. And then you can have a dialogue. But if you just say, I like it, I mean, if I said, can I ask you what's your favorite color? Pink. Well, my favorite color is blue. You're wrong, I'm right. What do you say to me? I mean, how can you discuss my personal preference? You can't. Then it becomes, well, you know, I have more guns than you, so I'm going to kill you and make everybody like blue better, right? This is what happens. It becomes a battle of wills as opposed to an intellectual dialogue about the nature of things themselves. So here's a very brief working definition. There are 2 or 3 slides in this talk that require a little bit of concentration. This is one of the easy ones, but beauty is the clear revelation of the ontological reality of a thing. And this word ontological is one of these fancy theological words that means the study of the nature or the being or the existence of a thing as known in the mind of God. So hamburgers have hamburgerness, cars have carness, hotels have hotelness, Christ has Christness, plates have plateness. I might say, this is a lovely chair, but is it a very good plate? No, I mean, you could eat off of this, but it would not be a great plate. Right? So there's the nature of a thing that has its own identity. I'm a human being and not a plant, right? And so I'm a bad plant, even though hopefully I'm a pretty good human being. And so you have to ask the question, a thing has its own existent reality, known perfectly in the mind of God, and less perfectly in our minds. And when it reveals that clearly, we call it beautiful. That's very simple. It's very complicated, but it's very simple at the same time. So here's a glass. I'm at the table and I order a glass of water, and the waitress brings me a glass of milk. Is this a beautiful glass of, well, I should do it the other way. I asked for a glass of milk and I got a glass of water. Is this a beautiful glass of milk? No. No, it's not revealing the nature of the liquid that's in it, right? It reveals something about it, right? It's a liquid, it's a drink, it's in a glass. So it shares some similarities, but it's not the perfect expression of that. And so when you look at something like this, is this a Bears fan?
No!
Emotional response of the subject. How do you know this is not a Bears fan?
This is a cheesehead Green Bay Packer, uniform, yellow and green.
Right, so see, now, if you just saw this guy walking on the street dressed in his business attire, you wouldn't really know if he's a Bears fan or a Packers fan. But he put all this stuff, I mean, it's kind of objectively bizarre, isn't it? A foam cheese on your head is really weird. But that's the externalization made of foam, something of the earth, that reveals this otherwise unknowable reality. So I'm thinking the thought, You don't know what I'm thinking. You might see a smile on my face and assume it's a happy thought, or a frown on my face and think I'm thinking about traffic in Chicago. Thinking about talking to you, right? But until I say it or express it, you don't know. So there's an invisible reality that gets expressed by stuff of the earth. So you can presume he's a Green Bay fan. But what if he actually is a Bears fan?
You wouldn't know it.
Yeah. So what do you say about this guy?
It's like a falsehood.
Yeah, he's a liar, right? So you see all of a sudden beauty, which is the revelation of the reality, suddenly takes on a moral component, right? Because he's a bad guy, right? There's a phrase that said Jesus either was the Son of God or a very bad man. Because he either was what he said he was, which is the Son of God, or a liar, because if he weren't, then he's a liar. And so this guy's either a Green Bay Packers fan, and a beautifully represented one, or he's a liar, and therefore not a beautifully represented one. And so all this talk about attractiveness, you can attract somebody to beauty and then kind of punch them in the gut with something false. You could attract somebody to a beautiful hotel room with lovely linens and then hide spikes in the mattress, right? And they get spikes in the back. And so external has to correspond to the idea that's behind that external. All right, so I'm going to ask you, which one of these buildings reveals churchness more than the other?
Right.
This one. How come?
The cross.
There's a big cross on it. Suppose I took that big cross away. Does it reveal much churchness?
Yeah. To some extent.
Yeah.
The top.
Yeah, it's got kind of a peak that seems like it's ascending. Does anybody know what this is? This is the chapel at the Illinois Institute of Technology, just down the Dan Ryan. And all the other buildings look just like it. There's something that they can use it for a chapel, but it doesn't reveal chapelness very well. Where this one doesn't really reveal chapelness very well, so they have to put a big giant cross on it. And so how about this comparison? Which one of these reveals churchness more? Right, are there big giant crosses on it? No. So there's something in our collective memory of the way churches are often designed, with what they call a clear story and a lower area and these little scrolls, that this is kind of the form churches take. There are lots of forms churches take. This could be the German Shepherd of churches, and someone else could do the Collie of churches. There's lots of species. But even though it doesn't have big crosses on it, it still looks churchy. This one, well, what does it look like if it didn't have the cross on out front? Any guesses?
School.
I heard school. What was over here?
IHOP.
Well, a lot of people say it looks like a Pizza Hut. Now, is this a beautiful church?
No.
Is it a beautiful Pizza Hut?
No.
Well, does it reveal Pizza Hut-ness?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now remember, beautiful things reveal their ontological reality, their very nature. And so the same thing can be a really bad ski lodge or a really bad church and a really good Pizza Hut. Because the object, the earthly matter, all the things that this was made from, reveal what it is. So it's true. This is not the lying Bears fan, right? If you went in there and found McDonald's, you'd be pretty mad, wouldn't you? Like, it says Pizza Hut. I wanted pizza, and now you're giving me hamburgers. What's wrong with you, right? There's a mismatch between the external and the internal. And so it depends what category you think a thing ought to be in. So this chair should be in the category chair, and it is. But if someone said, plug your USB drive in there and try to project it on the screen, so, are you crazy? That's not a projector, right? So there's a category called projector, there's a category called chair, there's a category called Pizza Hut, and there's a category called anything else. I'll ask you this, which one of these is the more beautiful meal? And how can you tell?
The lamb. The lamb looks beautiful.
The lamb looks beautiful. Anybody want to argue for the McDonald's? I mean, how would you decide which one's more beautiful? Because you could just be accused of being a snob, right? Oh, well, you like high-gluten food, or you're some kind of classist, rich person. This is only what the poor can eat, right? Then aren't you being a snob if you say one that's more beautiful? Or you might say, well, this is more beautiful than that, or you're some kind of Marxist, right? You're opposed to high-living. Notice neither of them are talking about the word beauty. They're talking about class and social problems and all that, and they're included. But I saw your hand. Was your hand up?
Well, so they both could be beautiful, like in itself, depending on what your need is or what you're looking for.
Right, which is the way of saying they each have a proper ontological category. That's what you meant, I know, right? There's a kind of meal called fast food, right? And there's a time and a place for it. And then there's a kind of meal that's more, I don't know, do you have a particular term for this? Elegant, haute cuisine, that's it, yeah. And so you don't do this when you're running down the highway on a road trip with the family. It's really impossible. And so there's a time and a place, and they both have a beauty proper to their kind of thing. So, which one of these is a more beautiful meal? This Big Mac or this pile of rocks?
Big Mac.
Yeah.
How come?
Food. It's rocks are food.
What if I like to eat rocks?
It's in the wrong category.
Yeah.
It's not in the category food, right?
Right.
So it's revealing rockness, but rockness is not foodness, right? And so, are these beautiful rocks?
Yes.
Yeah, they're pretty nice. Are these a beautiful hamburger? No, right? So this is the thing to keep in mind. Whenever you start thinking about is the thing beautiful, you have to ask the question, what is it? What ought it be? What should it be? And is it that? It's very simple. I'm thinking, what is it? I've figured out that definition. I look at the object and say, is there a correspondence? If there is, then it's participating in beauty. Very uncomplicated, really. All right, so I'm doing a little thought exercise. If I gave you a piece of paper and said, please draw a procyon lotor, how would you begin?
Asking questions.
What is it?
What is a procyon lotor? Right. Now notice, before you can make it real, or even make it beautiful, you have to know what it is. And so beauty is always an object of the intelligence, of understanding. So I'll tell you, a procyon lotor is a raccoon. Oh, I know. And so, assessing the beauty, so you had a subjective response to the raccoon, which is fine. Assessing beauty presumes knowledge of what a thing is, and therefore what should be done. Now, if I drew this, you'd say, well, does it share any qualities with the raccoon, this elephant?
No. They're both animals.
They're both animals.
They've been walking for us.
They have 4 legs, 2 eyes, ears, whatever. Right? So they've got a lot of the same stuff, but then all their proportions are different and so on. So this is a less beautiful raccoon than this, even though they both share in some qualities. Doesn't mean elephants are bad, it just means that elephants are elephants and raccoons are raccoons. And if someone says draw a raccoon, you have to know what a raccoon is. If someone says draw an elephant, you need to know what an elephant is. If someone says respect the dignity of the human person, you have to say, what's the dignity of the human person? What's a hotel room? What's a sheet? What's food? What's a plate? What's the difference between a feast and just any old eating? And so these are all things that come in mind. So, is this a beautiful hotel?
No.
How come?
It looks like an airport.
It is an airport, right?
Yeah.
His flight got canceled and the hotels are full. But he found a place to rest his head, cover his eyes, put his feet up. Why is it, I mean, it's not a hotel, but why is it not a beautiful hotel?
Because it's not a hotel.
It's not a hotel. It has some similarities with hotel, right? A place to sleep.
It doesn't look comfortable.
Right.
Right. So it's not a beautiful hotel because it's not revealing the realities of hotelness. Is this a beautiful airport?
No.
No, because there are no planes there, right? So you have to say, what is it? What should it have? And does it have that? And does it have it in a complete and full, beautiful, compelling way? All right, so here's some of the reasons to know any of this. Beauty is that about the truth which we find attractive, compelling. That which makes us delight in knowing the truth. So you can make food that's nutritious, and you can make food that's nutritious and delicious. You can make food that is something, and you can make food that looks like what it is. I don't know what fondant is. Does anybody know?
Fondant.
I seen it on the Cupcake Wars show. What's fondant made of?
Sugar.
Sugar. And they make it look like palm trees and Muppets and fish. I mean, it doesn't look like what it is, right? But there's something delightful about that joking around the food as well. But here's the thing. It's that which is true, and then the little extra is added to make it attractive. And so it's related to revelation. When it's presented beautifully, it rings true, and it pleases the mind and the soul of people. So, if someone comes up to you and looks like a perfectly respectable citizen, and then when they get close to you, they punch you in the face, call you bad names, and mug you, there's something beneath the human dignity about that, and their external and their internal aren't matching. And here's a really important thing. To know how to make or do anything beautiful, we need to know what's true about it. And this is why philosophy matters. Even though if you think philosophy is complicated, old-timey guys in ancient Greece talking about nothing important, what is justice? It's a really important question. You want to make laws? You want to have racial equality? You want to have gender equality? What is justice? And then how can it be applied? And then you have to know what's true about those things. This requires intellectual inquiry. Yes, what do I know about this? But there's always an emotional response. What's a raccoon? and then, aw. They're both there. But if that raccoon didn't look like a raccoon, you probably wouldn't have gone, aw, because you'd say, ooh, is that roadkill? You know, roadkill raccoon is still a raccoon, but it's not an awe moment for you. Now substitute delicious for beautiful in all of these things. Delicious is that about the truth of the food which we find attractive. Delicious is related to revelation because you want to know what it is you're enjoying, and when it's presented deliciously, people say, I delight in that. I want that. Can I have more of that? If you go open up a restaurant and your food tastes terrible, are people going to come flocking in? They're attracted to the disgusting quality of your food? No, it sends you the other way, right? In order to know how to make something delicious, you need to know what's true about it. What do you do with beef? What do you do with fruit? What do you do with beds in a hotel? And so you have to know, and there's still an emotional response. If I make this delicious, people will say, wow, I love you, honey. Right? You made me a meal on Thanksgiving or Valentine's Day. It's not just the doing, although that's part of it, but it's the deliciousness that makes that doing beautiful. And this, what I'm teaching you now is called a realist approach to beauty, which means that beauty is in the object, which is not the way most of the world thinks. Most of the world will say beauty is in the viewer, right? I look at it, either I like it, I don't. My response is what matters, and beauty's in my brain. I'm teaching a realist approach. Beauty's in the object. So this is a chair. It's either a beautiful chair or not. And I had a teacher in grad school named Bill Westfall, and he used to say, if you look at a beautiful thing and you don't know it's beautiful, then you and not it are deficient. It's pretty hard words, right? But if you present a beautiful, delicious food and some 5-year-old comes up and says, I really want hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, the kid's deficient, right? Doesn't mean he's a bad person. Hopefully will grow into appreciation of the food. But the little kid goes to an art museum, Mom, this is boring, right? Eventually you grow into understanding. Yeah.
So is it kind of like in everything in its form is the way it should be, it's beautiful? Mm-hmm.
Yes, if there's a correspondence between what it ought to be and what it is, that's what we call beautiful. Now this is not a narrow, limited thing. The problem with people have with beauty now is they say, I think I'm a genius, I'm going to pick one thing and say, that's universally beautiful. So I'm going to say, you know, I'm in the third rank. Oh, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people are objectively more beautiful than everything else. Well, that is completely false because they're taking one earthly example and trying to universalize it. When we talk about beauty, we're talking about the idea that includes every possible manifestation of beauty. There's an infinite number of ways to cook a roast beef, right? And they could all be beautiful. There are also a lot of ways to not cook a roast beef. And a roast beef that's not a roast beef is not beautiful because it's not beef, right? This is not a good roast beef. This poor chair didn't know it could be in for work. So once you get in the character, once you understand the character of a thing, you can have an infinite number of expressions of what is beautiful. Because beauty is associated with being. Here's this phrase here. To be is to be beautiful. Just having existence means you're participating in the reality of your own existence. So everything that has being has beauty to some degree. And this degree of beauty is in proportion to the perfection of its being. Now that's kind of a heavy sounding thing, but if I say I would like to serve apple pie and I don't have apples, it's not the same participation in the beingness of apple pie. And what has the potential to be more beautiful, a rock or a person?
Person.
Yeah, a rock has a beauty proper to it, but a rock doesn't have intellect or will. A rock can't love, a rock can't move itself around. So humans have the possibility of greater perfection of being, even if you're not very well along on the perfectness. And so though beauty is in the object, it always requires a perceiver. So it's always this back and forth between the thing and the person who perceives it. So things are beautiful in themselves, yet beauty is revealed only when it's perceived. So is a beautiful object beautiful when no one is looking at it? Or is a delicious meal delicious when no one is eating it? If a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right.
The same question. Right, deliciousness is in the food, right? But the deliciousness is not being revealed to the perceiver until somebody eats it. It's not like it wasn't delicious and then somebody ate it and it became delicious. It was delicious, and then they ate it and the deliciousness was revealed. I have an existence, whether I'm in this room or not. So when I was in my car stuck on the Kennedy, you say, well, Denis McNamara is not in the room, he must not exist. But no, he's not in the room yet, but he has existence somewhere else. So deliciousness, my existence is in me, right? This is my object, myself. And so still there's a relationship between the observer and the object itself. So it has its relation. So is beauty in the eye of the beholder then? This is a tough question. Is it in the tongue of the eater? Right? That's what people tell you. Oh, well, we can't agree on the philosophical foundations of humanity, so we'll just agree to disagree, or we'll agree to have an emotional response. This next couple of slides, these are the hardest slides of the talk here. So, get your coffee going in your brain here. Complicated sounding theories of beauty, the power of reality to please in being contemplated. So I not only look at it in an immediate response, but I think about it and I say, wow, that pleases me. Which means I have to know what pleasing is, right? So a Satanist could walk into church and a Christian could walk into church and have very different responses to the same thing. So it gives a joy in knowing, a superabounding joy because of what's known. It's beyond the joy of knowing. So you make a beautiful meal for someone and you say, I use 1 cup of flour, 2 cups of this, 5 sticks of butter, lots of bacon. You can always get excited even at that point. You can sort of know, oh, bacon, butter, it's going to be great. But that's not the same as the joy that comes from actually encountering the food, right? That's a superabounding joy that's beyond knowing. It's actually perceiving. And so it exalts and delights the soul by being given to the intuition of the soul. If somebody loves you and they sit in a room and say, well, come on, honey, you know I love you, go make me a sandwich. Well, that's not the same as I love you, please allow me to make you a sandwich, right? There's something beyond the fact that's evident that lights people delight in that. And it reveals the inmost knowledge of that ontological reality again. What does God understand about things that's beyond our knowledge? If you get a flash of that for a second, they call it eschatological flash, the flash of the end times as God knows them, then that is one of the things that is perceived with beauty. I know it's high theology here, but primarily here we have beauty as an object of intelligence. I know what it ought to be, and it's open to intellectual inquiry. So how does this compare to I like it? I like it, I don't like it. How does that compare to beauty?
You're not really viewing it as like a whole is what it is, because you just kind of are in the middle.
I'm saying my subjective response is dominant over the objective reality of the thing. And so this is a lot of discussions happen when people are trying to decide what to do. They say, well, I like this, I like that. In fact, I watched an episode of Chopped this morning when I was drinking my coffee. And there's that guy, Scott Conant or somebody, he hates raw onions. And he was yelling at the guy, I hate raw onions. And then the guy put raw onions in the second course as well. He said, didn't you hear me? I said I hate raw onions. But he didn't really make an argument against raw onions. He just said, I don't like them, right? Nothing objective about raw onions itself. So liking is interesting, but liking connected with the intellectual inquiry is how you talk about beauty. So here's a question. Is a poorly designed building made of shoddy materials and has no altar suitable for a new cathedral?
Suitable?
Yeah. How come? I mean, what's the process when you think, it happens so fast you might not have thought of the process. But how would you, so I like cathedrals made of shoddy stuff with no altar. I like plates with no food for dinner.
Okay.
I want to do something nifty that no one's ever done before because I have a subjective whim. So I'm going to make people eat roadkill or pieces of bolts. Nobody ever eats bolts before. What's the process?
Well, wouldn't a cathedral have certain things that it's made up of in order to be a cathedral?
Yeah, so you're talking about ontological reality again, right? This is what a cathedral is in its very definition. This is what it ought to have. This thing doesn't have what it ought to have, so therefore it's not suitable and therefore not beautiful. And so in the traditional philosophy, the mind is made to delight in the beautiful, to know the truth and to love that which is good. So the mind is made to delight in knowing, the mind is made to delight in what's beautiful, to know what is true and to love what is good. All right.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Probably you're going to get to